The Pacific Crest Trail is a ribbon of wilderness that stretches from the heat of the Mexican border to the frozen breath of Canada. But between those vast bookends lies something older than even the land beneath it. There's a place, just south of the Oregon line, where birds go quiet, cairns stack themselves, and the forest feels aware. In 2003, a man named Daniel Lowry entered that stretch alone. He never came out. The stretch of trail in question runs through the Siskiyou Wilderness, nestled deep in Northern California's Klamath Mountains. Official trail maps mark it plainly enough. Mile 1678 to 1704, a peaceful, forested ridge with sharp switchbacks and tall lodgepole pines. But hikers who've walked it speak of something different, something not found on elevation charts or GPS logs. They call it the quiet stretch. There, the birds fall silent for miles. The hum of insects gives way to still air. Even the wind moves differently, threading through branches as if choosing its path. You walk and feel watched, but not by animals. It's the kind of watching that presses gently on the back of your neck. Not aggressive, just present. Daniel Lowry first heard about it in a cafe in Mount Shasta. He was 34, already 800 miles into his northbound PCT journey. A former park ranger, he had traded uniforms for notebooks, writing essays on ecology and silence. He told a fellow hiker he was looking for a place the world forgot. The other hiker, older, sun-worn, gave a tight smile and said, "You'll get your wish near Carter Meadows. Trail gets thin there." Thin and old. Daniel jotted the phrase down. Thin and old. According to his trail journals, mailed home in regular intervals, Daniel was drawn to that description, not repelled. He described the forest as less a place and more a mind with trees for thoughts. His handwriting was small and steady. He packed light but methodical. No major injuries, no missed resupply boxes. He was not, by any stretch, careless. But Daniel made one decision most would not. He chose to walk the quiet stretch alone. The last town he passed through was Etna. From there, the trail climbed steeply into dense forest. Hikers generally paired up in this stretch, some skipped it entirely. But Daniel set out alone on July 3, 2003. His final journal entry, left in a Dropbox just outside town, read, "Next few days should be silent." Hoping for clarity. Been dreaming of birdsong, but waking to stillness. Curious if the trail has something to say. The morning he left, the weather was overcast but dry. Other hikers spotted him eating trail mix near a bend in the path. He waved, smiled. One remembered his eyes, clear, quiet, like someone listening for a sound too distant to hear. At mile 1682, there's a natural bottleneck, a narrow ridge between two sheer drops, shaded by twisted pines. Locals claim this is where the trail changes. The soil grows darker, damper. You begin to see cairns, small stacks of stone, carefully balanced in 3s or 5s. Too neat to be accidental, too frequent to be coincidence. Daniel's GPS beacon pinged one final time from this spot. After that, the forest swallowed him. For the first 3 days, no one noticed. It wasn't unusual for solo hikers to go off-grid in rough terrain. Cell reception was patchy at best, and Daniel was used to long silences between check-ins. But when he failed to show up in Sead Valley, his next resupply point, concern began to build. A week later, a search team was dispatched. They found no gear, no body, no clear signs of distress. Just the whisper of footprints that faded at the base of a slope near mile 1692. And, in the hollow of a downed tree, a trail marker painted bright red. Odd, because trail markers in that region are typically white or brown. Local rangers had never seen it before. In the years since, other hikers have passed through the same stretch. Some recall a sudden hush, the sense of their breath echoing too loudly. One woman said she turned off her music when the air felt too crowded with silence. A man from Utah claimed his compass spun slowly in place before correcting itself 3 miles later. None of them lingered. All remembered the same detail. The birds did not sing there. That silence, the absence of the ordinary, is what lingers most in those who've walked the quiet stretch. It is not terrifying, exactly, but it is not kind either. One hiker who journaled the experience wrote, "The forest is not asleep here. It's waiting." Daniel Lowry never came out of those woods. No more journal entries surfaced. His name faded from headlines and forums. Yet his absence settled into the trail's folklore like moss on stone, slow, soft, and permanent. In 2006, a pair of hikers found a small cairn with a tin badge tucked beneath it. The badge bore the insignia of the National Park Service. It was dented, slightly scorched, and bore the initials DL. No one could prove it was Daniel's, but no one could explain it, either. There are places on this earth where the land feels thin, where whatever separates us from the unseen wears down, frays, and curls at the edges. The quiet stretch of the Pacific Crest Trail is one of those places. It does not roar. It does not trap. It waits. And those who walk it must decide whether to listen or leave. Because some trails are not meant to be conquered. Some trails, like the one Daniel Lowry vanished on, are only meant to be remembered. In folklore, warnings come in threes. It's not superstition, it's structure. 3 signs to turn back. 3 cracks in the pattern. 3 soft echoes that say, "You do not belong here." Daniel Lowry's story follows this rhythm more closely than most. His steps into the quiet stretch, the remote section of the Pacific Crest Trail that swallows time and birdsong, were marked by 3 such signs. Each subtle, each survivable, each a chance to stop walking. He didn't. The first warning came less than a day into the stretch. At mile 1683, the trail wraps tightly along a ridge spine, cliffs dropping off both sides like broken jawlines. Trees grow sparse here, shaped by wind and old fires. The ground is sharp with shale, and the sun sets earlier than it should. Daniel paused here, as evidenced by a pencil mark on a water cache log found years later. Just the initials DL, under the date July 4th, 2003. He noted, in a page later mailed home, "Entered the ridge today. Something wrong with the sound. Not silent, muted, like someone put wool over the world." He described stopping in the middle of the path, noticing that his footsteps no longer echoed. The call of a raven, common companions this far north, rose briefly and cut short mid-cry, like a record needle lifted. He stood still, waited, held his breath, and then, far down the trail, he heard something that should have been reassuring. Footsteps. Not his. Measured. Human. But slightly off. Like someone mimicking the rhythm of walking, but not the weight. Daniel waited for the figure to appear. No one did. After 10 minutes, the sound stopped. He walked on. The second warning arrived the next morning. Between miles 1686 and 1688, there once stood a ranger lean-to cabin, now long off maintenance. Officially, it was abandoned in 1978 after trail rerouting made it obsolete. Built from fir logs and pine chinking, the roof caved in sometime during the 90s, or so the records claimed. Yet in 2003, hikers who passed through a week after Daniel's disappearance described it very differently. One woman wrote, "Looked recently used. Floor swept. Wood stacked. Dust-free. We thought maybe a hunter was squatting." She also recalled something strange, a faint smell of cedar oil. Not the natural kind, the processed kind, like what you'd find in furniture polish. The kind that shouldn't linger in an open-air ruin. Daniel never mentioned this in his public journals, but a torn-out page was later found inside a waterproof pouch left in a hiker box near Ashland. On it, in slightly shakier writing, was this: "Saw the shelter from the dream. It's wrong. I've never been here, but I remember the angle of the door, the window without glass, the empty nail in the beam. It's cleaner than it should be. I don't think it was waiting for me. I think it knew I'd come." The handwriting below that fades off mid-sentence. The third warning came in the form of cairns. Stacked stones, common along trails, are typically placed to mark confusing paths or river crossings. But these were different. Daniel first noted them in his Etna notebook, mailed days earlier. He'd heard rumors from southbound hikers about strange cairns, too frequent, too symmetrical, sometimes stacked in spirals rather than columns. By mile 1690, the cairns appeared every quarter mile. 3 stones, then 5, some balanced in precarious arches, defying gravity. At one point, he passed a set of 7, each topped with a smooth river rock. Impossible, given that the nearest stream was miles away. In his last known entry, written on the inner flap of his map, Daniel scrawled, "The cairns are wrong. They feel attentive, like they've been placed for me. Not by someone, by something." Later hikers, unaware of his fate, would leave coins, pine needles, even lockets on the cairns, offerings, in case someone was listening. One hiker remembered walking past a spiral made of stones and small bones. Bird bones, mostly, but not all. She didn't take a photo. She didn't go back. These three warnings, silence, shelter, and stones, formed a quiet crescendo. None of them shouted. None of them hurt him. All of them asked a question. Do you want to keep walking? Daniel answered with his feet. When he reached mile 1692, Daniel vanished. No emergency beacon was triggered. No screams echoed. No animal prints. Just absence. Later searchers found two things. First, a piece of red cloth tied around a pine sapling, roughly shoulder height. The sapling was too young to bear weight. It snapped when brushed. The cloth was clean, freshly torn. Second, a single feather, gray and black, tucked beneath a flat stone at the base of a cairn. DNA analysis was inconclusive. Some said it was raven. Others said hawk. A few said, not bird at all. The forest remained quiet. Some stories try to make sense of this disappearance. They suggest mountain lions, injury, exposure. But all those theories leave something behind. A body, a bag, a boot print. Daniel left none. He walked into a place that had whispered 3 times, "Go back, go back, go back." And he had whispered once in return, "I hear you. I'm coming." There is no name for the hollow. Not on maps. Not in ranger handbooks. Not even in stories. But the trail knows it. And so did Daniel Lowry. Mile 1692 is not remarkable in elevation or terrain. It lies between two modest ridgelines, dense pines on one side, scrubby fir and bare shale on the other. GPS users sometimes report minor glitches here. Nothing dramatic, just a second's drift, a wrong pin, a missing dot. Hikers who've passed through call it the sag, or the turn that never ends. A place where the switchback twists wide like a loosened belt, descending into what should be a simple gully. But time moves differently there. Some say it feels like walking through honey. Others say their minds wander too easily. Hours pass without realizing. One woman later wrote, "I stopped to tie my shoe. When I stood up, the sun had moved like it skipped a page." This hollow, shallow though it seems, has never held permanent snow, even when other ridges do. No rain pools in it. And despite being shaded, it feels oddly warm. Not pleasant. Close. Daniel Lowry's last GPS ping came from this spot, though it registered as half a mile beyond where he should have been. A hiker the following year said the same. "I followed my map and realized I'd walked too far without ever seeing the switchback. Felt like I lost 10 minutes in a flat clearing." The forest here grows differently. At the base of the hollow stands a pine tree with a hollowed trunk, wide enough for a grown man to sit inside. Scorch marks ring the inside, but there are no signs of lightning. Rangers think it burned from the inside out, long ago, perhaps from a smoldering ember left by a careless camper. But no one camps here. Daniel's name is not carved in the bark. No dropped item, no scrap of fabric, no tread-worn boot mark remained to say he entered the tree. But something else did. In 2005, a volunteer ranger named Marcus Bell, helping flag portions of trail for repair, noticed the hollow tree. Curious, he shone a light inside. Just past reach, he found something wedged behind old bark. It was a folded square of paper wrapped in waxed canvas. Water-stained, faintly scented of cedar. The note, later authenticated by his sister, was Daniel's handwriting. "I found the song again. Not from the bird, but from the stillness. It has no words. It doesn't end. It hums. It waits. I think I've always heard it." Marcus turned around and left that day. Never returned. Quit the trail crew 2 months later. When asked, he only said, "That place isn't evil. It just remembers more than it should." Around the same time, hikers began reporting strange echoes in the hollow. Not loud, soft, but dissonant. Like distant wind chimes, but without breeze. Some said it felt like someone walking parallel to them, just inside the tree line, matching their pace. One man, a former combat medic hiking for PTSD recovery, dropped his pack and ran 6 miles south after standing in the hollow for 10 minutes. He later told a podcast, "It's not haunted. It's not a ghost. It's like something was wearing the forest, and I almost looked it in the face." These stories trickled quietly into trail forums, Reddit threads, old Appalachian Trail mailing lists. No official warnings were ever issued, but word spread. Some hikers began skipping that stretch entirely. Still, no one found Daniel. But that fall, a red trail marker appeared at mile 1692. No such marker had been placed by the U.S. Forest Service. Red is never used for mainline trails. It's reserved for hazard warnings, search grids, or emergency markings, none of which were registered in that region. The marker was hammered into a deadfall log. It bore no words, just the color, as if it meant stop or remember. Rangers removed it. The next year, it reappeared, 3 feet to the left. It's now considered unofficial tradition not to touch it. Some nod as they pass. Some leave small offerings. Coins, pine cones, folded notes. Daniel's sister, Rachel, returned to the trail in 2009. Not to search. By then, she'd made peace with the fact that Daniel had not been taken in a conventional way. She hiked to the hollow with 2 friends and stood there in silence. In an interview later, she said, "I didn't feel afraid, but I did feel watched. Not threatened, just known. Like the land remembered my brother and wanted to know if I remembered him too." She brought a small wind chime made of tin and thread, hung it on a branch just outside the hollow's edge. It made no sound until night fell. Camped half a mile away, she woke once to the sound of soft ringing, then silence, then a bird call, short, sharp, unfamiliar. When she returned the next morning, the chime had twisted 180 degrees. No wind that day. Even now, hikers report seeing a man without gear, walking ahead just out of reach. Never turning, never speaking. When they speed up, he slows. When they stop, he vanishes. One woman swears she called out, "Are you Daniel?" The figure paused, tilted his head, then continued walking. That same woman had dreams for 3 nights after. Always of the same roofless cabin, rain falling through the beams, and a bird watching from the rafters. She didn't return to the trail the next year. The hollow has no official danger rating, but among hikers who know, it's referred to as the listening place. Not because it's loud, but because it hears what you don't say. And if you've lost something inside yourself, grief, loneliness, a question you can't name, it may offer silence in return. But that silence has depth, and it may not let you go. Daniel Lowry was last seen walking into this hollow. He was never seen walking out, but some believe he's still there. Not gone, just listening. 6 months after Daniel Lowry disappeared, the winter came early to the Siskiyou Range. Snow dusted the trailheads by late October, and the backcountry was emptying out. Most through hikers had already completed their journey or detoured east. The quiet stretch lay untouched, covered in fog and frost. And yet, someone was still walking. In January 2004, a Canadian hiker named Thomas Eames returned from a brief solo loop near the Sead Valley Junction. He had only planned a 2-day out and back to shake off the weight of city life. What he didn't plan on was what he saw near an old side trail once used by fire crews. Overgrown now, nearly forgotten. Thomas claimed he saw a man standing barefoot in the middle of the wash. No shoes, no gear, just tattered clothes and a distant, vacant stare. He didn't speak. Thomas called out, "You all right?" The man turned his head slowly, not startled, just slow, as if the question had to pass through layers of something else first. Thomas described the figure as sunken but not starving, wild-eyed but not lost. The kind of look, he said, that people wear after finding something they shouldn't have survived. He took a step toward the man. The man took a step back, and then turned and walked into the trees. Thomas followed for a few seconds, pushing aside branches, but found nothing. No tracks in the frost. No snapped twigs. No scent of campfire, sweat, or decay. Just the forest, hushed and waiting. He returned to town the next day. Later, when he saw a flyer about Daniel Lowry online, he swore it was the same face. Most sightings after that followed a pattern. No one ever saw Daniel up close. No one ever captured a photograph. But over the next 10 years, at least a dozen reports surfaced from hikers, trail maintenance crews, and even a lost hunter. Each time, the description was the same: male, mid-30s, lean, clothes worn but intact, no gear, walking slowly, always away from the observer, eyes forward, never speaking. Some said he moved like someone who didn't need the trail to find his way. One southbound hiker, a veteran named Carla Reeves, said she saw him on a foggy morning near mile 1697. She assumed he was another solo hiker until she noticed his feet were bare and his skin looked dry. Like bark. She called out. He didn't react. As he walked past, she said softly, "Are you Daniel?" He paused. Without turning, he said, in a low, gravel-like voice, "Too loud here." Then he was gone. Of course, skeptics argue these sightings were misidentified vagrants or shared hallucinations driven by exhaustion and isolation. They say Daniel's disappearance became a legend, and people saw what they expected to see. But hikers are not easily fooled by stories. The trail strips illusions. It demands clear eyes and quick judgment. And yet, somehow, dozens of unrelated hikers describe the same presence. The same quiet. The same man who kept walking. Even more curious were the reports of footprints. In 2010, a ranger named Hallie Norris was checking seasonal runoff hazards near Carter Meadows. Snowmelt had turned the switchbacks into streams. While marking rock slides, she came across a set of bare footprints. Human. Adult. Light tread. She followed them for half a mile before they simply stopped, mid-stride. No slide, no turn, no doubling back. Just one final step on damp soil, then nothing. Hallie didn't tell anyone until years later. "I didn't want to file a report with no end," she said. "But it's haunted me ever since. Like he stepped out of this world, one foot at a time." And then came the birdsong. A strange pattern began to emerge in trail journals and blogs. Hikers sleeping near mile 1700, just north of where Daniel vanished, reported dreaming of birdsong. Not ordinary calls. Not crows or finches or hawks. This was different. One hiker wrote, "It was too musical, like someone whistling a lullaby underwater." Another said, "I heard it in the dream, but it followed me into the morning. I kept expecting a bird to land nearby, but the forest was empty. The sound wasn't coming from outside me anymore." Daniel had written of a similar dream weeks before his disappearance, a roofless cabin, rain that never landed, and a bird singing a tune no one could name. It was not a coincidence. By 2012, hikers began leaving tributes at the old lean-to shelter near the quiet stretch. Someone carved DL into the entry beam. Another left a folded page from leaves of grass. But most often, they left stones. Tiny cairns began forming around the base of the shelter, 3 stones high, never more. Some placed feathers between them. Others left coins. One woman, a poet from New Mexico, camped alone near the shelter and left a note that read, "If you're still walking, I hope your silence is kind." She returned the following year. The note was gone. In its place was a pine cone, hollowed and wrapped in thread. Whatever Daniel became, ghost, echo, myth, he never stopped moving. Some say he is the trail now. Others say he found the thing he was looking for, and it asked him to keep walking so it could keep watching. He is not seen by accident, only by those the trail chooses. Only when it wants to remind them. This world is not entirely mapped. Hikers still pass through the quiet stretch. Some make it without a vent. Some don't sleep well for weeks after. And a few, just a few, walk a little slower, look a little longer. And remember, in the silence, the shape of a man just ahead. Not threatening, just walking. Before Daniel Lowry disappeared, the trail between mile markers 1680 and 1700 held few cairns. Only the occasional stack built for wayfinding or marking sketchy stream beds. That's how it always was. Functional. Sparse. But after Daniel, the stones began to appear. First 3, then 5, then spirals. Not placed by rangers. Not registered by trail crews. Just there. In the spring of 2005, 2 hikers from Oregon, Alyssa and Mark Gentry, documented over 17 cairns along a 2.5-mile stretch near Carter Meadows. None matched official placement. They described them as too precise, too clean, as though the wind had never touched them. One sat directly in the middle of the trail, built 6 stones high and capped with a weather-smooth piece of tin. Alyssa knelt beside it to take a photo. That night in camp, her partner found the image on her digital camera, blurry, unfocused, almost in motion. But Alyssa swore she hadn't moved. Stranger still, the audio file from her video log, recorded moments later, was corrupted. Not static, not silence. Just a low, slow rhythm. Like breathing. Close. Deliberate. She never camped alone again. By 2007, the cairns became so frequent that some hikers began removing them. believing them to be trail vandalism. One such hiker, a former trail crewman named Rob, toppled a series of 5 while passing through solo. He kicked the stones into the brush and walked another half-mile before setting up camp. That night, he woke to find a new cairn beside his tent. 3 stones, freshly stacked. One was wet, despite no recent rain. He left the trail the next morning. Most who dismantled the cairns said the same thing. They returned. Sometimes within a day, sometimes slightly altered, always silent. They didn't seem to mark danger. They didn't point toward water. They didn't even follow the trail exactly. They followed people. A hiker named Joel Peterson, who'd walked the PCT 3 times, began documenting the phenomenon. He published a blog post titled The Cairn Builder, describing a pattern he found disturbing. I began seeing cairns even in places where I shouldn't have been noticed. Side trails, short detours. They followed, but they weren't warnings. They were acknowledgments, as if something was saying, "I see you." In his post, Joel described a night near mile 1695 when he stepped away from camp to relieve himself. He returned minutes later to find a perfect circle of 7 small cairns around his tent. The other hikers in his group had been asleep. None heard movement. None claimed responsibility. Joel didn't sleep that night. He left a pine cone in one of the cairns the next morning, just in case. The cairns are never messy. Each one is built with precision, small at the base, tapering toward the top, always with a stone that stands out, a different color, a smoothness, a crack like a line of script. In 2008, a woman named Nadine found a cairn with a feather lodged in the middle stone. She removed it carefully and discovered it wasn't a feather at all, but a carved sliver of bone, shaped and polished, marked with 5 notches along its edge. She didn't keep it. She placed it back, just as she'd found it, then turned and walked on. Later, she wrote, "It didn't feel threatening, just accounted for, like something needed me to know I'd been noticed." Then came the GoPro incident. In 2011, a group of hikers from Colorado placed a GoPro on a tree facing one of the larger cairns overnight. The idea was simple: capture any animal or person interacting with the stones. They returned in the morning. The camera was intact, but the video was unusable. No visuals, just black screen. The file duration was exactly 7 hours, beginning at sundown. But the audio remained. The first 5 hours were unremarkable: forest ambience, distant insects, a breeze. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the wind died. At 3:13, a soft scraping sound, like stone on stone. Then breathing, slow, deep, too close to the mic. Then a faint whistle. 3 notes, rising, falling, rising again. Not quite musical, more like imitation. No one was visible on the footage, but the cairn had changed shape. A retired ranger, who asked not to be named, confessed in 2013 that he once tried to document all the cairns between miles 1690 and 1699. He made it through 2 miles before turning back. They didn't like being counted, he said. When asked what he meant, he said nothing, just opened a notebook. The page he showed had 26 cairns drawn, hand-sketched in detail. The next page, where the rest should have been, was torn out, burned from the corner inward. Locals in nearby towns refuse to speak of the cairns. Most say they've never seen them. Others change the subject. One elderly resident of Etna, when asked directly, said, "Stacking stones is an old thing. Older than trails. Older than even walking, maybe. You mark what you don't understand, so it'll remember you kindly." She wouldn't say more. The tradition now is to leave something small if you see a cairn on the quiet stretch. A coin, a feather, a note. Nothing big, nothing loud. Just enough to say, "I know you're here. I won't disturb you. Please don't follow me home." Some leave a simple circle of thread. Some carve tiny symbols into bark. And a few leave 3 stones of their own, carefully placed, facing the ones already there. Not as a challenge, but as a conversation. Who builds the cairns? Some say it's hikers, unknowingly drawn into repetition. Some say it's forest spirits, still cataloging those who pass. Some say it's Daniel himself, no longer man, no longer lost, just part of the pattern. A new kind of ranger, a quiet observer, the cairn builder. Long after Daniel Lowry vanished, long after the cairns began to rise and the quiet grew thick around mile 1692, something else began to drift through the Pacific Crest Trail. Dreams. Not rumors, not sightings, dreams. And almost all of them began the same way. Rain, falling steadily through a roof that wasn't there. A cabin with no walls. And a bird watching, silent, from the rafters. The first known mention appeared in 2006. A solo hiker, Nina Patel, kept a trail journal in tightly wound cursive. Her entry from July 18th read, "Woke up unsettled. Dreamed of rain. Heard it everywhere. On my bag, on the tarp, on the forest floor. But everything was dry. I stood in a building that had no walls. It was like standing inside a memory. Felt like something knew me there." She thought little of it, until a fellow hiker she passed 2 days later mentioned having a similar dream. Rain, roofless space, stillness. Over the next 5 years, dozens of similar accounts emerged, spread across forums, social media threads, even back pages of trail registers. Always near the quiet stretch. Always around miles 1690 to 1700. Always the same rain. Only it never touched the ground. Psychologists might call it shared suggestion or environmental priming. The forest is already strange, the silence already unsettling. A mind deprived of noise and comfort may invent continuity. But that doesn't explain what happened in 2012. A research group from a small liberal arts college in Oregon had taken an interest in the Daniel Lowry case and its folklore after it began spreading in hiker communities. For students, one professor, they camped just north of the hollow for 3 nights. On the second night, all 4 students independently reported dreaming of rain that never touched them. More curious, all 4 drew the same cabin the next morning. Same layout, same open rafters, same bird, and one more detail. In each sketch, near the back wall, a stack of stones. 3 high. Rain that never falls is not a frightening image. Not at first, but to dream of being inside it, of hearing the sound of it on your skin, your pack, your bones, only to wake dry, is something else. Many who've dreamed it say they woke with the distinct feeling that someone had just spoken to them, but they couldn't remember the words. Just the sensation, like meaning evaporated before memory could hold it. Some describe a voice, like wet leaves sliding across one another. Others say it wasn't a voice at all, just a shape behind the sound. None of them ever dreamed it again. But some say they've heard the rain while walking, clear skies, no clouds, and still, the sound of soft pattering just behind them. By 2015, stories of the dream had grown so widespread that it acquired a name among thru hikers, the Echo Cabin. It became a kind of whispered myth. Not everyone believed in it, but everyone had heard of it. Some treated it with reverence, some with amusement, but most with caution, because if you did dream it, something changed. A woman named Leslie Quinn, a trail medic and experienced hiker, recounted her Echo Cabin dream in a long-form blog post. "I don't scare easy. Been solo hiking for 10 years. But that dream? It wasn't scary. It was quiet in a way that stuck to me. I walked different after that. Kept checking over my shoulder. Not because I thought I was being followed. Because I felt like I'd left someone behind. Or like something had followed me out of the dream." She ended her post with a confession. "I left a letter at the shelter. Told Daniel I was sorry I saw his rain." The Echo Cabin never appears on clear nights. Only after hikers camp within the quiet stretch. Only after a certain stillness. Many now leave something near their tent. Small signs of goodwill. Stacked twigs, folded leaves, even whistles. They say if you hear the rain in your dream, you mustn't try to leave the cabin. You mustn't look for the bird. And above all, you mustn't speak. Because if you speak, the bird listens. And once it knows your voice, it remembers. Rangers have tried to rationalize the trend. They blame overactive imaginations, shared stories, sleep deprivation. Some laugh it off, others do not. In 2018, a temporary station was proposed near Carter Meadows to assist with increasing hiker traffic. Surveyors were dispatched. GPS units. Trail engineers. Plans were drafted. The station was never built. One internal report, leaked anonymously, stated, "Electronic mapping tools failed to maintain signal for longer than 2 minutes at a time." Personnel reported dizziness, audio disturbances, and elevated heart rates within a localized region between miles 1691 to 1693. Recommended to abandon plan. No official explanation was provided. The forest in that stretch is dense, but not dark. The canopy is high, light filters through. And still, Those who walk it say the silence feels too complete. The way a room does after someone has left it, but their shape remains. They say the wind dies. The leaves stop moving. And the moment you think it's beautiful, you hear something faint. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Just rain. Daniel Lowry's sister, Rachel, returned once more in 2019. She left no flowers. No letter. Just a chime, woven from tin, bone, and twine, hung quietly from a branch above a cairn that hadn't been there the day before. When asked if she'd had the dream, she smiled sadly and said, "No, I didn't dream the rain. I heard it." And now, hikers carry that memory with them. If you camp in the quiet stretch, if the night is too still, and if the rain comes with no storm, don't listen too long. Don't search for the roofless cabin, and don't answer the bird, because once it hears you, you belong to the silence. The Pacific Crest Trail is not a single trail. It is thousands of footsteps pressed into pine needles and sand, granite and ash. It is stories carried in backpacks, tucked into journals, whispered into campfire smoke. Most vanish with time, forgotten, worn away by weather and distance. But some remain. Daniel Lowry never left behind a body. No grave, no final campsite, no proof. But his memory didn't fade. Because the trail, this trail, remembers. In the years since his disappearance, something has lingered along the quiet stretch. Not a ghost, not a haunting, but an awareness. The forest near mile 1692 feels different now, even to those who've never heard Daniel's name. Some hikers say they walk quieter there without knowing why. Some say they forget the sound of their own voice. Some stop and stare at nothing for long stretches of time, then move on, uneasy, as if they'd just passed through someone else's dream. A cairn now stands at the entrance to the hollow. 3 stones, always there. No one claims to build it. Rangers knock it down in spring. By midsummer, it returns. At its base, offerings collect. Not trash, not debris. Intentional things. A page from a novel. A pair of baby shoes tied with thread. A photo of a man standing in the woods with his back turned. Each season brings new ones. No one is seen leaving them. But the pile never overflows. It's as if the trail accepts only what it wants. Daniel's sister, Rachel, stopped returning after 2020. She released a final statement in a quiet, personal blog post, shared only once before being deleted. "I used to think I was hiking toward my brother. Now I think I was walking where he once was, and still is, somehow. He's not stuck. He's part of it. I can feel him in the stillness, in the quiet moments between footfalls. The trail remembers what we forget. And some stories don't want to be finished." No one's heard from her since. A new generation of hikers walks the PCT now. Some skip the quiet stretch, citing weather or timing. Some go through and feel nothing but pine and fog. But others, just a few, come back with new stories. They speak carefully, respectfully. One hiker, a former Navy corpsman named James, walked the trail in sections. In 2022, he hit the quiet stretch alone. On the second night, he dreamed of the roofless cabin. He did not enter it. He did not look for the bird. But in the dream, he saw something else. Daniel, sitting at the edge of the shelter, facing away, hands folded in his lap. Still, calm. James didn't speak, didn't move. He woke with tears on his face. He wrote in his log, "I don't think he's dead. I don't think he's alive either. I think he became part of what this trail knows. And I think he listens." Listening is what the trail does best. It doesn't judge. It doesn't warn with thunder or fire. It offers stillness and waits to see if you understand what that means. Some never notice. Some walk faster. Some, like Daniel, stop walking altogether. Not because they're lost, but because the silence finally answered them back. The cairns continue to appear. The echo cabin still visits the dreamers. The rain still falls where no cloud passes. And sometimes, just sometimes, if the air is still and your steps are too loud, you may hear a voice behind you. Not angry, not cruel, just soft, curious, too loud here. And when you turn, there's no one there. Only the path behind you, only the hush, only the trail, waiting to know if you've learned how to listen. So if you find yourself between Carter Meadows and Sead Valley, if the birds grow quiet, if the cairns outnumber your reasons, if your dreams carry water that never touches skin, know that you're walking on more than dirt and stone. You are walking across a memory, not of a man who disappeared, but of one who became part of the trail. And the trail never forgets what it chooses to keep. If that gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who sleeps with the lights off, and hit subscribe, or the next photo might have you in it. Tap the bell. The next story drops soon.